Hello, everyone. It is so very good to see you here today. Thank you for joining me on this training for selling without fear and selling without feeling icky or gross. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Learning about how to sell and not feeling that oh gosh, here comes the asking for money part, right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? These are the sorts of things we're going to be talking about. We're going to get into some of the specifics around what fears that we have when we get into the selling conversation. I will tell you, I'm speaking about the royal we, meaning me, right? But fortunately, I was able to learn a lot about what was going on in my own head, a lot of buying psychology, and how much trust really goes into that equation. So, for those of you who are joining me today, please let me know where you're from and let me know what you're maybe hoping to learn. Like, what's maybe a block that's holding you back from sales, maybe what you're trying to learn from today, so I can try to adjust on the fly what it is. Because sales training cannot be done in an hour, right? But maybe you can pick up some tips. I'm a strategist, so I am the CEO and founder of Strategic Boardroom, and I do a lot of different things, right? I work and for specifically, I really enjoy working with small business owners who are married, who have kids at home, who are really, really super busy, and they understand that there are four main functions of business: lead gen, sales, operations, accounting. I'm getting ahead of myself though, because those are all those four core functions we're going to get into here in the training. But I really do understand the sales training side of it, and why that's so important, because until I really started taking in sales training and really putting those tools in my toolbox, my sales training was, or my sales method was horrendous. So we're going to get into that. Okay, so let me go ahead and let's see here. We've got a couple of people we got from Oregon. Hello, Carly. You're from Oregon, a performance artist. Very good. Sam, Narav, hello. You're an interior designer. That is great. We've got, let's see here. Sorry, Marzana, interior doors sales associate. Very good. Sorry, these words are really, really small to try to read. If you can see, and they're like teeny tiny font, and I am in total denial that I need full-time glasses. Evelyn. Hi, Rita. I'm from Kenya, and I am in the hospitality industry. Excellent. I was in the hospitality industry for a number of years. I worked for the Marriott for a number of years. I worked for some limited service hotels. I lived and grew up in the Catskills in New York. So hospitality industry was pretty much what we grew up around. Carly, good to see you. How to sell your service and show it's beneficial to the client. That right there, Carly, is it, right? That's everything. And how to get to trust as quickly as possible. We're going to talk about that in sections 4 and 5 here, but really it's going to be about delivering and creating value for the client. And really it's going to be about getting trust as quickly as possible. There's a couple things I may not necessarily say, but you know, the thing that is really important is creating that trust with them in lots of different ways, right? Whether that's through client testimonials, whether that's through demonstration, whether that is just through giving them information that they can use that's immediately valuable to them. There's lots of different ways to do that. So no one right way, but there's lots of really, really good ways. So let's get into it right now, because we've got a lot to cover in a really short period of time. For those of you who have, let me ask you, how many is this the first time you have seen me speak? Say first time, or you are a repeat offender. Go ahead and put that in the chat if this is your first time here, or if this is if you've seen me speak before. I would be interested to see how many. This is your second. Yeah, Carly, I thought your name looked familiar. I've been emailing some of you. Narav, this is your first time. Okay, very good. So Sam. Yeah. Okay, second. So very good. First time. Okay. I'm gonna call you Kenna because I cannot hardly read the rest of that. Arzana, first time. Okay, so this is the first time for many of you. So I'm just going to let you know a couple just right out of the gate. Marzana, first time. Okay, so right out of the gate, what I want to say is please don't multitask. We're going to spend it like the next 55 minutes together. I'm going to try to be really quick and put as much information into your head as possible in the next 55 minutes and be done at 4 o'clock. I'll probably go a little bit over, but not by much. You will be getting a replay of this because I get that question asked along the way. Will we get a replay of this? Yes, it will be delivered in your email inbox from my extension, markdolfini.com. So pay attention to that. It's probably going to wind up in your spam. Gmail hates me. I don't know whatever I did to Gmail, but it does not like me. So it sends everything to spam. Just keep an eye on your spam for the next day or so. The replay will be sent to your inbox, but that does not give you license to multitask, because realistically, we're trying to train our brains. And let me ask you something. If we were in a sales conversation and you're my customer, and I'm demonstrating my value, I'm demonstrating how I could work for you as a strategist, but when you're telling me your problems, I'm like looking over your shoulder and just kind of seeing what's on around the room. Am I going to be super effective as a salesperson? You don't need to answer. Of course I'm not, because I'm not even showing interest in you. So why would you show interest in what my product or service is? That's sales 101. So what I'm trying to do is to get you to train your brains to concentrate for a period of time. You can do it, right? I don't care how ADHD you are. You can do it. You can focus on the things that are truly important for you. All right. So let's start to train our brains a little bit and not allow ourselves to be distracted. Turn off your, set the proper buying environment, if you will. I don't have anything to sell you, but I'm just saying, if whatever it is that could be a distraction, set it aside and just give yourself permission to check it at 4 o'clock. All right. And you will be getting the replay going forward. All right. So we talked about selling without fear, selling without the ick, selling without a gross feeling. Yes, it will be available on YouTube, Sam. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this video, I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and then I'm going to send you the link. But if you want to go on YouTube and follow my channel, you can do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to send you the link. You don't have to follow it. I'm not about vanity metrics about following. I've only got like 2,000 followers, so I have a pretty small channel. But yes, it'll be on YouTube. But I will also be I'll take the link and send it to you in your email. All right. So really, this is about selling without fear. This is about selling, and specifically selling one-to-one versus selling one-to-many. I'm going to talk to you specifically about selling one-to-one. Selling one-to-many is a different skill set. It's not all that different, but you do have to tweak a couple of different things. And I do have a selling from stage seminar that I did last week, and no one showed up. So I don't know if I'm going to do it again. I'll probably do it at least maybe one more time. But no one really seemed to be all that interested in it. But that's okay, right? I'm putting stuff out there that people may find valuable, may not find valuable. But I will probably do that again if you're interested to selling to groups, if you're pitching to a group. But this is specifically one-to-one sales, where you're knee-to-knee person, shoulder to shoulder, selling them one product with one buying decision. So I just want to understand that this is what we're going to be talking about specifically, and not selling like to a group or anything along those lines, like where you're trying to sell a timeshare and you've got 50 people in a room. That's a different type of selling from stage. Okay. You are interested in that, Alan. You would be one. Okay. I've got one vote. Okay. All right. So Alan, here's what I'm going to suggest. And anybody who else might be interested in that or any other future things, when it's time, take notes. Don't do it now, but when it's time, go to Eventbrite and follow Strategic Boardroom. Anytime I post something new, it will send an email to you, send a notification that I've posted something new. And then we generally will send other emails to let you know that this is coming up. But I'm just letting you know, if you follow that, it sends a notification automatically. All right, so let's get to specifically the one-to-one selling. I want to let you know right now, and for those of you who don't follow American football, I apologize. I used to follow American football quite a bit. I'm an American, used to follow football. But here's the thing, it's really worth, even if you don't follow it, it's actually a great story about Vince Lombardi. And it was interesting because during that period of time, they didn't call it a Super Bowl. They actually called it the NFL championship game. And I don't think it became a Super Bowl until 63, maybe. I might be off on that. If someone knows that, you can Google it. And no, don't multitask. But if you know the answer, you can put it in the chat. But anyway, he was overseeing the Green Bay Packers in 61, 62, 65, 66, and I think in 67, right? So you're talking 5 years, like 5 out of 7 years, this guy oversaw a winning team, and he never had a losing season. So this is what's interesting about this, is that when he walked into after losing 1960, he lost the championship game, walked into the locker room, spring training in 1961, and he came in to a room full of hard men. I'm talking hard football, like big, men who have played this game professionally for a good chunk of time and played football for most of their lives at that point. So think about this and think about how important these next words were for him when he walked into this room full of professional football players. He walks in the room and he extends his right hand, holding a football in his hand, and he said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he went on that same route of talking about basics, from tying their shoes to putting on their pads to putting on their jerseys to blocking and tackling and all of the basics. And that is why every season he went back to the basics. And it's also John Wooden, who is arguably, I mean, if you don't know anything about John Wooden, he was a basketball coach for in a collegiate season. He was amazing, and he also embraced the basics. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we must address and readdress the basics. And what you may want to learn today, some of you may have sales experience. How many of you, go ahead and put in the chat, how many, do you have years of sales experience? How many years of sales experience do you have? Some of you may be brand new. That's okay. Good for you for being here. Some of you may have been doing it for 10 or 15 years. Even better. That shows that you're willing to keep sharpening the saw. I am really good at sales, but I am never too good to ever look at a webinar, seminar, book, or anything where I can say, I'm not going to read that book because I know everything about sales, right? Mostly new, some pitching. Okay, 8 months, very good. You said 411. Information? Okay, I think that's what you mean. Carly, I'm not sure what you mean. What's your YouTube channel? It's at Mark Dolfini, but don't multitask. I'll send it when you get the link. You can find it. It's just at my name, at Mark Dolfini. But the thing is, the thing is that many of you are going to be learning some things today. You're going to be hearing some things that you may have already heard. But here is the thing: is I know you're going to be you're like, okay, you might be looking for the nuggets, but you're not even doing the basics. And here's the thing: boredom comes from repetition, but you cannot possibly achieve mastery without repetition, over and over and over doing the basics. So I'm just letting like that's the thing, is when you're ready, you just have to embrace that there's just going to be certain things that are just going to be boring, right? You got to put in the miles, you got to put in the time. So this is, when you're ready to proceed, you have to recognize that this is why people often hate selling is, you feel, now tell me if any of this feels true for you. So Carly, you're in 4 years, 1-to-1. Oh, 4 years of 1-to-1 sales. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was trying to understand what the code was. So I didn't set my decoder ring right. So 4 years of 1-to-1 sales. Thank you, Carly. So good for you for being here, Carly, right? You recognize, let's give it up for Carly. Let's give her some applause, because realistically, like, there's no reason that she would say, no, I know all I need to know about my sales. I've been in it for 4 years. Okay, good for you for being here. And there's some of you who are a little bit more camera shy that are not saying anything. That's amazing. I've been in sales, in some aspect of sales, for most of my professional career. And I'm telling you, there's never a sales book that comes along that I'm not going to make time to read about. And because there's always some different aspect I either can learn or relearn because I forgot about it. Okay. So let's talk about why often people hate selling. It's like you feel like you have to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. Does anybody feel that way? Totally don't know that much, right? Well, Carly, I promise you probably know more than you're giving yourself credit for. And good for you for remaining humble, because that is going to make you a really good salesperson. DeAndre, 4 years, good for you. So feeling like you have to convince someone to do something they don't want to do, that's one reason I hated it. I felt like I was convincing people to buy something that they didn't really want. I hated asking people for money. Anybody hate asking people for money? I'm getting some yeses, right? Yes, I've been told I should feel like I'm trying to solve someone's problem rather than convincing them that's exactly it. That's exactly right, Alan. You want to be the problem solver. You're just there. And even if you don't have the solution based on, your product or service, yes, leave them in a better spot. Like, hey, you may not be the best client for me. Can I just give you a couple of resources or send you in a good direction? Because here's the thing, and I know I'm going off script here, and I'm hopefully not going to go too long, but here's the thing. Think about this for a second. Have you ever had someone recommend a movie to you? Or have you ever had someone recommend a book to you and the book was amazing? The book was like, oh my gosh, it was amazing, right? Here's the thing, you will always attach that person to that movie. It's just the way it goes. So when you've helped someone and you've helped them and sent them in a good positive direction and they get taken care of, you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was amazing. They're going to attribute you to that success. It's just the way it's just the way it works, right? So Carly's saying yes, but it's easier when you lay out an investment. It's an investment in themselves. Yeah, that is true. That is true. So let me get to you guys are. I love that you guys are a chatty bunch. Let me get to the rest of this because you're going to start to see how this is going to get laid out here in the beginning, right? So the other thing is here, and I'm making this note here in case I don't make the point later on. I love you guys. You're my fellow sales brethren and sistren, okay? But we all suck at it. And we all suck at follow-up. And that's the thing. Is because generally we're like, oh, but I feel like I'm bothering people. Listen, if you have a real good product or service and you stand behind your product or service, it is your moral obligation to follow up with them. Now, it doesn't always mean following up with them to say, hey, you ready to buy my stuff? But it is your obligation to follow up with them with something of value. So if you've spent some time with them and you know what their problems are, you could send them things of value that are just avatar based, that are basically client based. It doesn't always have to be a solution coming from your company. What if you say that your avatar, for example, we'll talk about avatar here in a second, but let's say your avatar is a married couple with kids and you find out that there's a free, at a local church, there's a free, daycare or, parents' night out sort of thing, right? And it's all going to be around, a bunch of adults are going to be there. They're going to watch your kids, 3, 4 and up, until 10 or 11. And it's going to be all one room. They're going to watch movies. They're going to, have cotton candy, whatever. They're going to get them all sugared up. And you get to go on a date with your guy or your gal for 3 hours. And you knew about it, right? Even if it's not has nothing to do with your product or service, you'd say, hey, I don't know if this would be interesting to you, but hey, this church or this group or whatever was willing to watch kids for, 3 or 4 hours and all the adults are screened and everything else, right? So would they find value in that? As a parent of a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 3-year-old, I would want to know every event like that because my bride and I get hardly any time alone together. Okay. We're not being climbed on, right? We had a date night for the first time in so long. Like, oh, you know what we did? We went home and we sat on the floor and we ate potato chips. It was like for 3 hours. It was like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And it was just great being with one another. Right. And if someone had told me that, they would forever be on my Christmas card list. So I'm just saying, don't feel like you're bothering people if you're bringing value to their lives. And if you're feeling like you're bothering them, it's because maybe you're not bringing value to their lives. Think about that, right? And if they don't value it, it's no, hey, thanks so much, but no, we've got babysitting figured out. Okay, great. Okay, thanks for thinking of me, if nothing else. So let's get to the agenda. We're going to talk specifically about the Viper method. I'm going to go through very quickly the Viper methodology, which is what I wrote about in Time Wealthy Advantage. Then we're going to get into the 4 core functions of business. This is going to be a hot, really quick data point around the 4 core functions that every business has to have. We're going to talk about the lead generation function, because the lead generation function is the opening salvo that goes to the sales function. Okay. So talk about that in a second. Then we get to the sales, the actual selling process, and then some resources, exactly some success strategies, exactly how I lay all this out. So we're going to be hitting this hot and heavy. So I may not answer too many other questions. So I'm taking a strategic approach to managing your life and your business. That's what the Viper methodology does. And that is what is in this book, the Time Wealthy Advantage. So just letting you know, if you'd like to buy it, if you are overseas, if you are not domestic US, probably your best bet is to buy it on Amazon. If you are in the United States and you'd like to buy a copy of it, you can get it on my website at strategicboardroom.com. But I am not here to sell books. I'm just letting you know. Don't multitask right now. If you want it, you can even get it you can click on my, it's at the bottom of my email when you get that. All right, so let's get to it. Viper methodology is a framework for setting up a business. So for those of you who are interested in setting up business, I'm just letting you know this is the way that I do it. So the Viper methodology is a top-down approach, and it starts with vision, then infrastructure, process, execution, and then reporting. So I'm just going to do a really hot 30-second, what is this? Vision is where you want to go. We're going to come back to vision in a second because I want to unpack a couple of elements within vision. Vision is where you want to go though, right? Both from a personal perspective and a vision and a business perspective. That's vision. Infrastructure is the bones of the business. It's the desks, the chairs, the software, right, just the CRM, the website, things like that. The scheduling software, that's infrastructure. The process is simply how you do stuff, right? And you look at that from both a strategic perspective, right, from a long-term planning perspective, and you also look at that from a day-to-day tactical perspective, right? The day-to-day operational things of how you answer the phone, how your opening procedures or closing procedures, what to do in the event of, like how you prepare bank deposits, things like that, right? So you got your individual tactical stuff that you do day to day, and you have your long-term strategic planning when it comes to process. So talk about vision, talk about infrastructure, right? The bones of the business. Talk about process, how you do stuff from day to day and how you do stuff from a strategic planning perspective. Then we talk execution. Execution is actually what things you're actually going to do. And if you don't delineate the things you're actually going to do, you won't do them. You're going to be just busy from an operational perspective, just doing the normal things, whacking the closest alligator to the boat. So when it comes to execution, for those of you who are in sales, by the way, and you are doing your own lead generation, I'm letting you know that 60 to 70% minimum, and that's a minimum, of your day needs to be around lead generation. It needs to be about farming and kissing babies, shaking hands, reaching out to people, picking up the phone, emailing them, sending them value, right? And again, that value equation is basically 4-to-1. 4 pieces of value to 1 ask. Hey, here's value, here's an article, here's a thing, here's this thing. Oh, by the way, I've got this paid thing that maybe you'd be interested in, right? Value, 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 ask. Value, 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 ask. And it's that rhythm that people don't get upset if you ask once in a while. They do every time. You ever have that friend? Okay, let's time for some honesty. Do we all have that friend who slides into your Facebook Messenger like, hey, buddy, and you're like, oh God, what are you going to try to sell me now? Right? And you just don't conveniently open it because you're like, oh God, I don't even want to engage with them. Right? And this is interesting because I want you to think about this, because if I don't make this point later, I want to make this point now. And here's the problem. The problem is trust. The problem is you don't trust them. You may not trust the product, but you may not trust yourself to say no. How much of that trusting you to have to say no is something that you guys can relate to? Like, I don't want to get into a selling conversation because I'm too easy to sell to. I don't want to buy. So I don't trust myself in that situation. How many of you honestly have been in that situation? If I had 3 hands, I'd put them all up, because that is something that's why I don't want to get sucked into a timeshare conversation, because as much as I don't believe in timeshares, I don't want to own one, but I know they're super convincing and I'll probably say yes. Right? So I'm just saying their trust is a major, major component to what you're doing in terms of your execution, and you're building trust, but you need to make sure you're executing continuously. Reporting is just tracking your metrics from what are you doing from a day-to-day aspect to what are your results. Okay. So that's pretty much it. We're going to put the fries in the bag on the Viper methodology there. There's a lot more I can build out on other sessions, but that's not the point of this session here today. So let's go back to vision though for a hot second. Vision, like I mentioned, has 2 components: personal vision and business vision. Okay. And your personal vision is like basically where you want to go, right? So in other words, it's going to ask you a basic question. Where is it that you want to go? Where is it you want to go in life? Okay. That's a really important question to ask yourself in a sales career in advance, because if you don't have that figured out, it's going to be really hard for you to hit a target that you haven't defined. Okay. When you're going to business vision, now this is where it's going to be more specific to selling. So hang in there with me for just a second. When you start thinking about a business vision, it's how are we going to get there? So for those of you who may be in a sales career working for another company, that's fine, right? But you still need to have a personal vision worked out in your mind, because if you don't have a personal vision, or if you own your own business and now the business is everything, the danger in that is when you create a business vision or a career vision without ever considering a personal vision, you end up creating a life that exists to serve your career, or you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you, that's not worth it. It just sucks. I'm a 53-year-old man, and I spent a decade or more chasing that animal, and it was a rabbit you could never catch. Okay. Do I have a PDF document about this? I don't think so. I'm not sure what you're asking specifically, Evelyn. Be more specific. If you're asking about a PDF around this, I don't have anything around this specifically. I'm not sure what you're asking exactly. Be more specific in your question. So let's get to the 3 C's of business. So when you're defining business vision, personal vision is just basically where it is that you want to go personally. It's like, just start writing them down. Start writing down your goals. I have a little book that I keep all my personal goals in, right? One of my personal goals was to write the time wealthy advantage, right? Yes, about this. I don't think that I do around this. Maybe I need to create one. That's a good thought. Let me stew on that. If I do have anything that's related to this, I will send it in the email when you get the replay. How about that? Okay. So thanks it's a good question though. If I don't, maybe I'll create one. I'm happy to do that for you guys. Okay. So let's think about the 3 C's of business vision. Okay. The 3 C's of business vision are around the core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. I do, come to think of it, I do actually have quite of this written out in the Time Wealthy Advantage, but it's not specifically a sales book. I just want to let you know that's, if you don't own a business, it may not necessarily be super relevant to you, but I do talk about this in the Time Wealthy Advantage. Okay, so the 3 C's of business vision, core purpose, core values, and client avatar. So when we talk about core purpose, right? Again, this is around business vision. And this is really, really important when you're going into a sales conversation to understand the core purpose of the business. The core purpose of the business is, what business are you in specifically, and what problems do you solve specifically? And it's important you be really, really specific in your answers. If you're not really clear on the core purpose of the business, like what is it we're doing here? And your boss or sales manager, or if you are the boss and you can't articulate this, you're going to struggle in your sales, because when it leaves your mouth, it doesn't magically become more clear in the mind of your prospect. So you really need to know about what business specifically that you're in, and what business are you not in. Like, draw the lines in the sand. Like, what's the core purpose of Starbucks? Starbucks sells coffee, right? They sell some drinks. They maybe sell some finger food, but they don't sell chainsaws. They don't sell hamburgers. Why? Because it's outside their core purpose. So it's really important that you get this dialed in. If you are a business owner, you got to get this dialed in. If you're a sales person, you really need to know the core purpose of your product or service. That's it. What business are you in, and what problems do you specifically solve? Okay. So when you get into the core values of the business, right? This is the core values, is what matters to you about this business, what matters to you about this product or service, and how would the world be worse off if you were no longer offering this product or service? How would the world be worse off if you went out of business, if you were no longer doing this? This is really, really important. And I know this sounds super squishy and, oh yeah, that sounds really great. This is not just a homework exercise, because when you really get clear on this, you start attracting the avatar that you most like to work with. I had 3 people today. I was at a seminar earlier this morning, and I ran back here because I forgot that I booked this today, but I was not going to cancel it because it was really, really important that I was here. But during this morning, I had 3 people out of the blue come up to me, and they started talking to me about things that are in alignment with my core value. And they were, and like, my faith is a big deal. So we started talking about it, and I didn't invite them in that conversation. They just started talking and sharing their faith with me. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, how did you know to bring that up to me? They're like, I don't know. Right. And when we started talking about family, and I'm a gun guy, right? So we start talking about different things that are in alignment. And this is why, like, the core values of what is important to you, you become magnetic. And magnetic is important because a magnet attracts, but what does a magnet also do? A magnet repels, and repels the people that are not in alignment with your core values. And I have no idea why they don't like me. I have no idea why. But probably because I represent a core value that they don't like. Okay. Not everybody's going to like you, and that's all right. Right. I don't know what it is. I've never done anything wrong that I know of. Maybe I secretly offended her in some way and didn't mean to, but I don't know. But she doesn't like me, and she wears it on her sleeve. So I'm like, okay, I'm not sure. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Right. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. But take the time to get really clear on your core values and what the core values of the business and the core values of what your product or service represents, right? If it's not defined, if you're working for someone else and you don't have these defined, Go to your boss, go to your manager and say, hey, look, can we develop a set of core values around what we're doing here? Like, what does this even represent? Like, what's important to us? And this is what helps define the company DNA. And the reason why I bring this up is if you've ever worked for a toxic company, I promise you it's because their core values were misaligned. Or they're not developed at all. Because if they're not developed at all, the core values will be defined by the most aggressive person in the room, by the strongest personality in the room. That's the way it works out. So if they're not defined or they're not enforced, they're going to be defined or enforced by the strongest personality in the room. And then they're just going to portray their own core values. And that's just the way it works. So we talked about core purpose, core values, and client avatar. This one is key because we're going to come back to this over and over and over in the selling conversation is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? What are their geographics or demographics and psychographics? So when you start thinking about who this is, you start thinking about where they are, you start thinking about who they are. Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they, whatever it is. Like all, their income level, their education level, and then their psychographics as how they think. And when you start thinking about psychographics, think of the acronym ALIA, ALIA. You want to think about their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. And when you know these things, you can find all sorts of things that they will find valuable. And this is where you start to do what's called affinity marketing, right? Affinity is like, this is what they're associated with, right? Or, like, hey, I understand their interests, so I'm going to send them some things that they might find valuable. All right. So that is the 3 C's of business vision. Take the time and do the work because the more preparation you do upfront is going to make your selling that much easier. So we talked core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Let's get to the 4 core functions of business, which is a very straightforward. It is lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey in your company happens in that order. And it's really important to recognize the importance of lead generation and then the selling function, because this is what happens, right? They come to you because of the lead generation function. And that's pretty much the 4 core functions there. And the lead generation function, what that does is it lets the world know lets the world know what you're doing through a variety of different marketing approaches. I'll get to those approaches here in just a second, but effective selling starts in the lead generation function. And it does that by delivering massive amounts of value to your client avatar. See that name coming back up again, right? It attracts them because you're like, hey, are you a business owner that has some kids at home and just don't have enough time in the day? Oh my gosh, who are you and where have you been all my life, right? Or, hey, do you have an old clunky car that you're ready to trade in and you're thinking that you're not going to get qualified for financing? Let's talk. Make sense? Like you're starting to talk to them in a way, in a language that's important to them, in a way that will resonate with them. And it's also important that you do this over and over and over again, because repetition is what develops familiarity. Right? You may have that client or that competitor rather that is like, man, why do people go with them? I don't understand. Well, if they are the ones who are doing all the social media posts and putting up billboards all over town and going on the radio and going on television, they see them over and over, they develop familiarity, and familiarity is what creates and breeds trust. So you create familiarity by association. Hey, I'm associated with that basketball team, or hey, I'm a fan of that football team. That's association, right? You can do it through affinity, right? Affinity is like connecting in interests. Like, oh, you're a Christian? Yeah, me too. Or, hey, you're a gun guy? Yeah, so me too. Or, hey, you are a reader? Yeah, me too. I love to read, right? Blah, blah. You can do affinity in all sorts of different ways. Okay. You can do that by demonstrating authority as an actual author. It comes in the root word. Okay. You can demonstrate authority by demonstrating competence. And competence is the fastest way to generate trust, is to create trust by demonstrating competence, that you know what you're talking about. And it's also by repetition. You develop that familiarity by just doing it over and over and over again, right? Now, one of the things is that I want to make this point, and I will make this point again later, is that by demonstrating competence is the fastest way to build trust. It is not by being a nice guy or a nice gal. I'm sorry. Yes, demonstrating positive character traits, of course, helps. But there's plenty of people who have pretty shady character traits that people still do a lot of business with. You know why? Because they're good at what they do. That's just the way it is. Now, I don't necessarily want to not want to engage in things that are going to tear down my character, right? If I showed up here drunk today, that's even if I said things that were amazing, you're like, yeah, but he was clearly drunk and he talked about drinking before he got on the call. Why, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, and you may not align with that, or some of you might go, yeah, that's cool, right? Whatever, right? But for me, I don't drink, not because I'm opposed to it. I just don't. For me, in my 50s, the recovery time is like a week of therapy. So I just don't. But this is why I'm saying, like, this is where you start to create trust by these different areas, by familiarity, authority, associations, and things like that, right? Your whole job as a salesperson is to create trust with your prospect. And you do that by demonstrating competence, right? So let's talk about the various marketing approaches that exist, just so you can understand. And this is not a lead generation course specifically, but if you're in sales, you may be required to generate your own leads. If you're not, and you're just strictly sales, like, hey, the leads come in and you handle the lead, great. But you're not, but a salesperson who has to generate their own leads, that's why they get paid massive dollars. Because if you're just a lead manager, you're not as valuable. I'm just going to be honest with you. If I'm the one creating the leads as the boss and you're just handling the leads as they come in, you're not as valuable. Like, you're just a closer. I'm not saying just a closer. Closers are very valuable, don't get me wrong. But if I have a setter, if I have to pay someone who's a setter or create leads and you're the closer, you're not as valuable to me as someone who maybe does both lead generation and sales. Now, it depends. It depends on the ticket, depends on a lot of things. I can make an argument that it's way better for a company overall that you don't have your salespeople also creating and drumming up their own leads. It just depends on the industry. So so I don't want to paint it with a broad brush. I'm just saying that there are plenty of people out there who are salespeople that also generate their own leads. Okay. You're saying Storm, you're saying yes. So don't know what that is, but I'm going to go with it because you said yes. Right. So let's talk about different marketing approaches. So we said, so there's outbound lead generation and there's inbound lead generation. Outbound is like initiated by the company, right? It's like interruption marketing, commercials, things like that, right? Inbound marketing is where it's more SEO related, right? It's initiated by you, the client. And, for example, you went on Eventbrite and you were like, hey, I'm looking for, some sort of event, maybe some sort of thing I can learn. Oh, here's this half bald dude, Marine, thinks he knows things from Strategic Boardroom. I'll sign up for it, right? That's inbound marketing, right? So in other words, you went seeking and then we got connected, right? And here we are. So that's inbound. Inbound is where you are initiating it and then you come and find me, right? And that's through SEO, could be through other means, right? But all of this is around direct response. I like direct response, and you can use that in both outbound and inbound. Direct response is when you say, hey, specifically, here's my ad and I want you to do this thing, this was direct response. You went to Eventbrite and I said, hey, are you interested in this? And you had to directly respond. You had to act, hey, go to this link, sign up right now, right? That was direct response. It gives you a very specific thing to do. That is different than branding, where if I just said, hey, if you'd like to learn something about some things, consider signing up for one of my classes, but not really any real call to action. It's almost like the virtual billboard as you're driving down the interstate, right? There's really no specific call to action like, hey, go to 9th Street supermarket and buy Coke for $11. You're like, buy Coca-Cola, buy a case of Coca-Cola for $11. That's a direct call to action. You're not going to see that generally on a billboard because that's not that type of format, right? So that's direct response. Networking, of course, that's a different marketing approach. I actually have one of my more popular ones, which I really excited about, is your networking not working? People love that one. And I love that one because I'm a networking guy. I love to connect with people. That's actually kind of why I went to that event today, just to connect with some people. And, but is your networking not working? That's a thing that you might find valuable, right? You as my avatar. So these are different marketing approaches. You can form alliances, you can do joint ventures, you can do press releases, you can do affiliate type marketing, all these different marketing type approaches, right? Now, all of these things tie in directly to the three C's of business vision around core purpose, core values, and client avatar. But all of these things, you got to know these three things regardless of the marketing approach that you're taking. Because when you're entering into the sales conversation, The sales conversation enters and continues the conversation that was started by the marketing. Because if your lead generation is terrible, you're never going to have a sales conversation, right? This is why it's important that your lead generation and your selling are in alignment, right? And again, it goes back to why people hate selling. You feel like you're convincing someone to do something, hate asking people for money, you feel like you're bothering them. And why would you feel this way? You would feel this way if your lead generation brought no value to their life whatsoever. Let me ask you something right now. Is this a lead generation tool for me? Yeah, it is. Am I demonstrating value? Am I demonstrating competence? Am I at least reasonably entertaining? Right? Yeah, I mean, I like to think so. But most people are, and I mean, and I'm developing lots of connections. Some people may never buy from me, right? But they'll come and they'll watch, and I have zero problem with that, right? Because if I'm showing you something of value, right, you may show me something of value later on. Maybe you'll send me a referral. Maybe we end up having good conversation. That's okay. That's cool. I'm fine with that. Some of you may buy some other things, some low ticket things. Some of you may want full on consulting, right, or coaching or whatever, right? Or maybe just sign up for a 12-week challenge, right? I got a 12-week challenge coming up. But the point is, like, this is like all these reasons here that people hate selling is because you're not leading with value. And I keep bringing that back up because this absolutely makes selling more difficult when you're entering into an environment where people don't trust you. And they also don't automatically trust themselves because they're like, "Oh my gosh, Alan, oh man, I know he's going to like he just seemed like this really slick talker and I just know I'm going to buy from him and whether I want it or not, whether I can afford it or not." Right? Or Marzana, just like whatever. I just know that I'm going to enter into sales conversation. That's why people often will say, "Hey, if you want to, let's hop on a quick call." And you're like, "Nope, I'm good. I'm good." Like there's a lot of people that don't take me up on hopping on a quick call. I'm not trying to sell them, but you know why they don't? Because they don't trust me or they don't trust themselves. That's generally why, right? You are pretty slick. I know that about you, Alan. Very good. It's good that you own it. That's the important thing. All right, I'm going to get my shiny dome out of the way so you guys can see this. This is really, really important for you guys to do this as homework. Take a picture. I'm going to put all the 15 reasons. Oh, for crying out loud. So the 15 reasons why people buy. This is really important so you can understand why people will buy and how your product or service directly or indirectly helps them make money, or how your product or service directly or indirectly helps them save money, or how your product or service directly or indirectly helps them save time or avoid effort or escape pain, emotional pain, physical pain, right? Spiritual pain even, right? How do you get them more comfort directly or indirectly? How do you get them better health, right? Maybe you give them back more time so they can spend more time at the gym. Maybe you can give them back more time so they can not eat something that's handed to them, placed in a bag, handed through a window, or maybe just less stress in their life, right? How can you help them be the hero in their life and get them to gain praise or feel more love from people in their life or increase their status? How can you directly or indirectly help them feel that they have received truth from you? And people will buy truth especially if they have felt lied to in the past. They will buy for growth, right? Physical growth, spiritual growth, emotional growth, growth in their knowledge. They'll buy because something's new. They will buy because they get more perceived certainty or control, and they will buy also to be in contribution. So take a screenshot of this. This is the homework that you need to do to make sure you understand all the ways. And if you just come up with one way, you haven't thought through enough. You need to come up with 5 or 10 or 15 different ways through all of these 15 reasons, which will come up with what's 15 times 15? I don't even know. Million. What? I don't know. I'm not doing math in my head, but whatever that number is, right? You come up with all these different reasons why people buy and why they're going to want to buy and why they're going to want to buy your product or service as it relates to, like in some of these reasons, like, okay, you might come up with a couple turds, with like making money, like, I don't really help people make money, but again, directly or indirectly, this gives you lots of reasons to help you understand your avatar. All right. So come up with many different reasons as possible. This is a homework assignment that you have to take and take time to do it. Don't try to rush through it. It'll probably be something that you do over a period of days or weeks. And generally, it's going to be something you're going to think of in the shower. And you're like, dang it, I don't have anything to write with. Right. So be prepared that when you're in your alpha state or you're walking on a treadmill, you're driving down the interstate or something along those lines, that you're going to come up with different ideas. But think and know, like, get really into it. Do the homework. I can guarantee you a third or more of you are not going to do this work, and your sales technique is not going to change at all. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the actual success strategy. So we're going to get into the selling techniques a little bit for the last 15 minutes here. So this is where you're going to align your lead generation strategies and your sales strategies. And we're going to talk about selling and learning to sell in what's basically what I refer to as a solutions-based selling model. Okay, this is where you're not holding people's heads underwater. You're not overcoming objections, right? If you've got all these objections, just answer the question. Answer their questions and say, great, hey, this is a great question. I appreciate you answering that question, asking that question. But this is also just letting them know, like, it's not an objection, but you just need to, if you're coming up with objections, it's because you didn't do your job developing enough trust up front. Okay. Or somewhere along the process, it's broken. I'm going to show you where. Right. So again, we're also talking about having a support system. There's a free group that you can join. Again, I don't have anything to sell you on this. But there's a free group at the end. If you are a Facebook sort of person, you can do this. All right. So let's talk about aligning your lead generation and sales, right? And the reason your lead generation and sales functions must be aligned is, the sales function picks up, like I mentioned, is where the lead generation leaves off, right? And if they're not aligned, you're going to be confused. Think about, like, if you've ever clicked, like, let's say that there was an ad that popped up for Walmart, right? And the ad would be like blue and white, right? Walmart's colors. And you clicked on the ad, and the landing page that shows up is red and white. Well, red and white is not Walmart's colors. Who is that? That's Target, right? And you're like, wait a minute. I thought I just clicked on an ad for Walmart. This is really, really important, because the confused mind will always say no. So if you're not in alignment, right? If you're acting one way on your lead generation and you're acting a different way in your sales, they're going to say no. They're going to be really confused. They're going to say no. They're going to check out. Okay. And they're not going to trust you, right? And that you may never know why. So this is really important. So all of this effort around your lead generation and sales functions, this is all directing them to what I call the core offer. And I refer to this as a Godfather offer. Godfather offer is what, right? For anybody who's ever seen the movies, it's an offer you can't refuse, right? The Godfather offer is really important, because the core offer, or the Godfather offer, it's like people are going to feel like an idiot to say no to you. Okay. And that is, like, for example, like, I have this book offer. Okay. I sell the book on Amazon for $34.95. I don't have a lot of control. I mean, I have control over the pricing, but I don't really make much. I don't make much from book sales anyway. Like, it really is just kind of a, like, break even sort of endeavor, unless you sell like 1 million of them and don't do all the fulfillment. But I do a lot of my own fulfillment. I give out different guides, for this. But the thing is, here's the difference in that offer. Okay. And again, I'm not here to sell it. So please just understand, I'm just demonstrating an offer. Please don't buy it. I'm just letting you know this is what it works like, what it looks like. So if I sold the book on Amazon for $34.95 and I sell it on my website for $27.95, and I include these 2 workbooks, and I also will sign it for you, in ink in your name, and I will also throw in a 30-minute coaching session for you. Is that a no-brainer offer? Yeah, it's like, what's the catch? The catch is, if I sell it to you on Amazon, I have no idea who buys it. No clue. All I know is it's just a number. Sold 1 book. If you buy it from me, now I've got your name. Now I've got your email address. Now I've got your physical address. Now I've got your phone number, right? And I can market to you and, again, demonstrate value, but I can send you this and you get a lot more value for a lower price. So do you feel like this is a no-brainer offer? Yeah. Now, I don't have a way of doing fulfillment outside the United States right now, because, no offense, I don't want to mess with that. That's why I kind of leave that up to Amazon. But the reality is that, I'm just letting you know, like, that's a Godfather offer. You kind of feel like silly if you don't do it, right? So I'm just letting you know, like, this is where you start to recognize problem, agitate, solve. And this is more of a lead generation thing. But once you understand someone's problem, you rub a little bit of salt in it, and then you offer your business or whatever it is as a solution. Okay. This is where you start to understand this problem, agitate, solution. Hey, do you owe back taxes to the IRS? right? Are you getting all those annoying phone calls? Are you worried about wage garnishments? For that many of you in the United States, you've heard this ad before. Now here comes, whatever tax relief, blah, 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 right? Here comes a solution, right? That's a very typical thing that you can do, not just in the lead generation function, but also in the sales function. Tell me about your problem, right? Hey, tell me what it is. And I do this in what I call the discovery call. So this is a separate call. All right. So this might not work specifically for everything, but I'm just letting you know this is the framework that I teach. So I like to get into a discovery call so I can get them to talk about their problem. All right. So when I'm looking at this, I specifically want people to know, hey, let's talk. So this is a discovery call, and it's literally like a 5 to 10 minute call. It's literally just to say a preliminary qualification call for the type of person that's on the phone. I had one yesterday with someone who was interested in me, and we just literally just have a quick discovery call. Hey, tell me what you got going on. That is the first question, right? So tell me what your problems is. And how soon are you looking to address this specific issue? So they're telling me about this problem. Hey, I've got, bum worms or whatever it is, right? Whatever. Bum worms are a big funny thing in our house right now because we watch a lot of Bluey. Sorry. But whatever. Let's say you got whatever this problem is. So, okay, cool. How soon are you looking to address this problem? That's a really important question. Why? Why is that an important question to ask now? Because you may be thinking that they want to solve this problem tomorrow, and they are just kind of going, no, I'm just kind of getting information. I just thought it was something that I might want to do at some point in the next couple of years. Oh, well, that's a very different conversation then, right? You may be able to give them some information. Hey, give me some contact information. I'll keep you up to date on any changes to what we have, yada, yada. Then you put them into basically a drip campaign, right? You reach out to them over time, right? And develop that trust over time, right? But how soon are they looking to address this issue? Like, how soon are you looking to buy a car? How soon are you looking to buy a house? How soon are you looking to have this problem, solved for you? Okay, that's a really important first question. Secondly, what kind of budget are you, working with to solve this problem? That's also important to ask right out of the front of the gate, right? Right out front. Then who are all the decision makers? Everlyn, are you the only decision maker in this process, or is there someone else? Right? That's important to know because when later on, when someone says, "Oh, I got to talk to my XYZ," well, then that they need to be the decision maker needs to be brought in. And then finally, have you ever worked with someone in my industry before? Have you ever bought a car before? Have you ever bought a roof before? Have you ever, whatever? Have you ever bought a website before? That sort of thing. These are all really, really important questions to ask in the discovery session. And then I will book the actual sales call. Okay. And again, this is about solutions based selling. So during that period of time, I'm in between the discovery call and the actual sales call, when I'm going to have all the decision makers on the call, or when I'm going to their house, or when they're coming to me, whenever the appointment is, I'm going to be doing some research about them, research about the problem. So that way, when I show up, I'm initially now this is the actual sales call here. Okay. And initially I'm going to enter into what's called bonding and rapport. Bonding and rapport is not just chit chatting about, the weather, although that's important, but really I'm trying to get to know what their fears are. Like, what are they coming here with? Like, I've got some research. Now we're talking maybe a little bit about the discovery session. And here's where I hit them with what's called an upfront contract. Now, pay attention to this. An upfront contract, I want you to think of this. No, no, yes, yes, biggest fear. No, no, yes, yes, biggest fear. Now follow me. Okay. So let's talk about, let's say Storm. Okay. So Storm, or, let's say, you and Carly are here in front of me, and I'm like, hey, look, Storm, Carly, it's cool. I'm glad. Thanks you so much for being on time. Hey, listen, before we get started, by the way, we've already gotten started, but hey, before we get started, I just want to let you know, look, I'm going to present some different options for you to fix this issue that you've got. We've talked a little bit about that. I'm going to ask you some questions. Really, it's just as more of just an informational session. But if any point in time that you don't feel comfortable with what my solutions are, you can totally tell me no. Like, my kids will still love me. My wife will still make me dinner. I'm still going to eat dinner tonight. My wife is still going to spend all my money. Don't worry. I will be fine. Okay. But I just want to let you know that if any point in time I don't feel like this is the best fit for you, or we're not the best company for you, I may tell you no. Right? However, if we feel like, this is a good fit and you say yes and I say yes, we figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that sound good? I wait for the response. It's important that they say yes. I'm waiting for them to say yes. It's called a shy yes, right? So let's go back. Hey, Storm and who did I say? Storm and Carly. Hey, thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. Hey, just want to let you know just a couple things. Just want to let you know that you can totally tell me no. If this isn't the best fit, you can totally tell me no, right? Hey, just understand that I may tell you no if I just don't feel it's the right fit. Now, why am I doing that? Right? Did we love hearing no when we were kids? Did we magically love hearing no as adults? No, right? We don't like hearing no. So it's almost like they're leaning in, like, no, you don't get to tell me no, right? However, if we feel like it's, you say yes and I say yes, we'll figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that sound good? I'm waiting for them to say yes, right? And I will elicit a yes response from them. It's important that they say yes. Okay, cool, great. Look, my biggest fear is that you're going to delay taking too long to make this decision or whatever. Now, again, this is a little bit hard to do via mass training because what I'm doing is I'm waiting to I'm saying, look, my biggest fear is that you may wait too long and you may lose out on this opportunity, right? Is that really their biggest fear? Or is it really my biggest fear? No, it's their biggest fear because they've lost out in the last 3 opportunities. They lost out in the last 3 houses they were going to put offers in, or they lost out in the last 2 cars that they wanted to buy because someone bought it out from underneath them or their financing fell through, right? So really what I'm addressing is their biggest fears. But I'm saying, look, my biggest fear is that you're going to take too long to make a decision. You're going to lose out on this opportunity or something along those lines, right? Or whatever their biggest fear is, okay? So I'm addressing that and wrapping that as my biggest fear. My biggest fear is X, Y, and Z. Okay. So is there anything specific that you'd like to accomplish today? No, mostly they're going to say, well, whatever the answer is that gives you that opportunity to start to have that transition. Okay. Well, I'm really just trying to get some information about buying insurance or buying whatever. Okay, cool. Well, let's start to talk about, and we uncover their pain, right? And remember, we talked about the 15 reasons why people buy, right? So they're buying because there's some sort of pain in their life. There's some sort of problem that they're needing solved. So you're really trying to uncover their pain, so tell me, why is it so important that you buy insurance now? Like, why is it now such an important thing? Or why are you looking to buy a car now? Why is that important to do this now? Why is this important to do, like this has been a problem for a while, or this is a new problem for you? It's really important that you uncover their pain and recognize that there has to be enough pain for them to act. Okay. So I'm just going to leave that there, but I'm doing that by understanding and really eliciting as much emotional pain as possible. Because once I start to get to that, I'm saying, hey, look, now I can demonstrate some competence. So, hey, and I'll do this. Hey, can I put on my consulting hat for just a second? So what I would do is, and this is where I'm going to start to demonstrate competence. So I'm not going to say, hey, well, when you work with me, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, here's a couple things that maybe you've thought about, right? Have you tried this? Have you considered this, right? And you're demonstrating your competence. And that is what is creating that trust. Okay, that's really, really important to do this. Now, one thing I don't have on here, well, actually, I do have this. So once I get through the demonstration of competence, okay, it's going to get to a natural pause at the end. And this is where they're going to say, like, so there's going to be this natural pause, and they're going to be like, I'm like, so, okay, do you have any other questions? I'm like, no, they're going to look at each other, Carly and Storm, like, no, I'm good. Okay. All right. Well, are you ready for the big close? You ready? Well, how do you want to proceed? And I'm going to do the hardest thing that most salespeople have trouble with. I stop talking. I let that linger out there. I don't fill it in with words. I let them think. Well, how do you want to proceed? And whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, I'm letting that happen. So there's lots of other things that could happen during this period of time. But again, this is how you do this without punching them in the mouth, without holding their head underwater. Whatever the answer is, this is really important. Now I'm going to talk really quickly about a post sell. I know we're getting close on time here, but a post sell is like, if they do want to move forward, well, what's it like to move forward with you? Well, this is what we do, blah, blah, blah. If I have someone who's ready to sign the contract or hand me money or whatever it is, I say, hold on just a hot second before I run your card. Can you tell me real quick why it is that you feel comfortable to move forward? Why am I asking them this? Because people buy emotionally and they justify logically. By asking them right in that moment why they feel okay to move forward, They are legitimately in that moment, they're justifying it rationally. So I'm asking them to justify it rationally in that moment. So they go when they go home and the neighbor's like, oh, dude, you totally got ripped off. Like, no, we actually got a really good deal. Right. And they are have already thought about the logical side of the equation. They buy emotionally, justify logically, they justify rationally. So what you're asking them to do in that moment is to justify rationally, and it will drastically reduce the amount of returns. So that's really important to do a post sell. But I mentioned this before, follow them. Follow up, follow through, follow them, follow. Please do not drop the ball on this thing. And this is how you stand out, right? And this is something to understand too, is something called the peak end rule. The peak end rule. And this comes into buying psychology, is that most people, if you think about a movie that you have seen, most people will remember the peak of the movie and they'll remember the end of the movie. In your selling situation, people will remember the peak of the selling situation and they will remember the end of the selling situation. So that's what you have to stop and think about. You really can't control the peak, but you certainly can control the end. So it's really important to make them feel empowered, make them feel like they've been heard, and make them feel really comfortable with the process. So think about this. What do you still need to do, right? Well, you still need to, hey, get your referral. Hey, do you know anybody else that may be interested in something like this, right? Or anybody that does this. I do a lot of work on referrals, and we still have to deliver the product. So I'm going to ask you now. Hey, is it okay if you know at the end of the deliverable, is it okay if I ask you for a referral? So maybe you can start thinking about it now, right? This is something that I will ask during the sales process, because, hey, like if you're asking for it up front, like how many of them are going to give you a referral right out of the gate? There's a lot of trust there you haven't developed yet. You're all talk at this point, right? You've demonstrated some competence, but they don't know they can trust you. But when you say, hey, listen, Alan, I know you're super slick and all, but hey, Alan, is it okay if after we get all said and done and we get your house built or whatever it is, where you buy the car, is it okay if after you've had the car for a minute, I circle back with you to give you an opportunity to think about maybe who else could use my product or service? Would that be okay? Yeah, sure. No one generally says no. And then you'd say, cool, I'll circle back with you, but I just want to make you, I just want you to get and think about that right now. Okay. All right, so that is all I have, everybody. Thank you. I know we're just a minute or two over, but I'm just going to go ahead and land the plane on this. This is the important thing about having a support system, especially for people who are, like-minded, people who are just like me and have quirky senses of humor and things like that, and are not jerks, and specifically not jerks. So if you are a jerk, don't come to my Facebook page. But this is my Facebook group. You guys are absolutely welcome to come. Please send me an invite, or there's the invite if you'd like to come, if you're a Facebook kind of person. I will be sending out a replay again, like I had mentioned a couple different times. I look forward to connecting with you guys again in the future, and hopefully you found this helpful. And I would love to hear what it is, maybe some of your biggest takeaways when I email you guys. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time. Take good care.